So today is finally the day. After like 6 pages of not answering the question, today we're finally answering our question. So we have to review what was our question all the way back on Daf Gimel. We had a question. We said, why do we need the drush of Aleha? We brought a whole braita. We learned from the word Aleha that Yibum, when you have the mitzvah of Yibum, and you have the Yevamot being a person's sister-in-law. So we have one pasuk that says, Isha achota lo tikach litzor legalot erata aleha bechaya, and another pasuk that says, Yevama yavo aleha, to teach me, even in a case of Yibum, lo tikach, a person's not allowed to be with his wife's sister. So the Gemara's whole last few dapim was trying to figure out, why would I think otherwise? Why would I think that Yibum would be allowed to an erva? So, and really the ikar question is, why do I need this drasha? Yeah, that was the question. Why do I need the drasha of Aleha to teach me that you're not allowed to do Yibum to an erva? Shouldn't I know an aseh, mitzvah aseh of Yibum is not dochel lo ta'aseh of karet, of being with an erva. So the Gemara, really we touched on the first answer yesterday, but we didn't say it out. Well, so let's just recap a little bit, and then we're going to B'ezras Hashem go through the Amud. So we're on Daf Chet. What we mentioned last time, we said there's a concept of Ho'il v'ishteri ishteri. What's the concept of Ho'il v'ishteri ishteri? So we had a case of a Mitzora who even though he's Tameh, he's allowed to stick his hands into the Azara, into the Machane Shechina, into the main area of the Beit HaMikdash to get the blood sprinkled on his fingers and on his toes. So since he's allowed to, the Tuma of Mitzora doesn't stop him from doing that, meaning he has a heter of, even though he's Tameh, being able to put his hands in there. So if he became a Baal Keri and he needs to do the Korban Pesach on that day, since we had a heter to put his hands in there for his sarat, even though he's a Baal Keri, it won't stop him from that heter. Ho'il ve'ishtri, since the Torah gave him a specific heter on one aspect, so the other aspect also, the other tuma also ishtri. So we said, okay.
Does he still need to go and do the stuff for the Baal Keri though?
So he already went to the mikveh.
With the korban.
But he did not yet. No korban. No korban for Baal Keri.
Does he need to do korban?
No. For Baal Keri, he just goes to mikveh and nightfall. I don't think there's a korban for Baal Keri.
Right.
So the way we translated that, we said, okay, the way that would apply to Yibum is it will only apply to a case where first the guy's sister-in-law fell to him to Yibum. Meaning, first his brother married, you have 2 brothers, 2 sisters. So one of the brothers got married to one of the sisters, and then he died. So now this lady falls in front of his brother to Yibum, and the brother gets up and marries her sister. So she first was mutar to him, mutar to Yibum. Before Yibum. So that means first this lady, his brother's wife, was mutar to him, and then he did something to make her asura for a different reason. Meaning she was an erva of brother's wife. That isur was lifted to do the mitzvah of Yibum. Now he made her asur for a different reason, so okay, that isur won't block the mitzvah of Yibum because she already had a heter on her. So
does it make it? My question is, does it make it with a Baal Keri that is no longer, or that's still there?
The tuma of Baal Keri is still there until night, meaning he's not allowed to enter Machane Leviyah, and especially Machane Shechina. It's karet. There's isur karet for him to enter. Once he gets tahor,
he puts his fingers and his toes in there.
He's still a Baal Keri.
Right, so he still has to go through the motions of being a Baal Keri later on.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay. I think if it's the night pass, he's not Baal Keri, it's a tahor.
Yeah, but that day that he saw Keri, even after going to the mikveh, there's an isur for him to enter the Machane Shechina. Yeah. Okay, so Says the Gemara. So let's read it inside. We're by where it says.
First word.
I'll tell you in a moment. So, Ella. It says Ella. The first one on the line is Lahavi. Lahavi ba korban, and then it says Ella. So it says Ella ki itzrich alea. Finally, we're gonna say like 3 answers in a row. Why do we need this special drasha to teach me that Yibum is not allowed by an erva? Ki itzrich alea. Hecha denasa met vemet v'achagach nasa chai. It's coming to teach me in a case where I would have thought ho'il ve'ishtri ishtri, where first one brother married a woman, and then he died, and then the living brother married her sister. So first there was a heter of Yibum on this woman, and then he married her sister, and now there's some other isur on her. So that we would think to say ho'il ve'ishtri ishtri, once she became muteret to do Yibum, that other thing doesn't block her once the heter already was chal on her. So for that case specifically, we need a pasuk to teach me that even in such a case you don't do Yibum. But for a regular case of an erva where she's the guy's daughter, that you don't need a pasuk for. Meaning the whole drasha of aleha to teach me we don't do Yibum to arayot is specifically for this type of case where she became an erva after she fell to Yibum. That's the first answer. Okay, then the Gemara says, V'baitema, or I could tell you another answer. So now, again, the question is the question that we asked on Daf Gimel Amud Bet on the bottom. Why do we need this special drasha of aleha to teach me that there is no Yibum by arayot? So why would I have thought, yes, you should do Yibum to arayot? So, V'baitema atia behekesha mid Rabbi Yonah. I would have thought to learn from the hekesh of Rabbi Yonah. Dama Rabbi Yonah, Veitema Rav Huna Breder Rav Yoshua. Rabbi Yonah taught, or some say Rav Huna Breder Rav Yoshua taught, very, very important concept in Nashim. It's known as Hekesha de Rabbi Yonah. The Amar Kra, the pasuk says at the end of listing all the arayot, the Torah lists every one of the arayot, every one of the forbidden relationships, and then at the very end it says, Ki kol asher ya'aseh mikol hatoevot ha'eleh v'nichretu. It connects all of them, and it says anyone who does any one of these, v'nichretu, there's karet. So it's combining all the arayot together in this one pasuk to teach me something. Hukshu kol ha'arayot kulan le'eshet ach. All the arayot are really connected to each other. So we can learn all of them from one of them. So they're all connected. This is a hekesh. This is not just like other types of limudim we had before. We tried to say amem matzinu. Well, just like the brother's wife becomes muteret for yibum, so any of the other arayot could also become. This is different than that. This is a hekesh. We're saying there's a halachic mechanism that is telling me that all of the arayot are connected to each other, and we could learn the halachot of one thing to everything else. So they're all connected to Eshet Ach. All the arayot are connected to each other. One of them, which is Eshet Ach, the brother's wife. So Ma Eshet Ach Sharia Af Kol Arayot Nami Sharian. I would have thought, because of this Hekesh, we would say that they all can be learned out of Eshet Ach. The same way that Eshet Ach, the brother's wife, a person is allowed to do Yibum to. Person has to do Yibum to. So also by all other arayot, person has to do Yibum. That's what I would have thought to say. Therefore, I need a limud to teach me that that's not true. So therefore, katav rachamana aleha, the Torah says the word aleha for this drasha to teach me that in a case of Yibum, lo tikach isha lachota lo tikach lisor legalot avata aleha, that there's no marrying a relative. No marrying, no doing yibum to one of the arayot. So at this point, we're giving a different suggestion. Why would I have thought to do yibum to the arayot? Because we have this hekesha de Rabbi Yonah that he says all the arayot are connected to each other, and we learn from Eshet Ach. So, but at the end of the day, we don't. So the Gemara says, Amar le Rav Acha midifti le Ravina mechti. So he says, let's take a look. Kol arayot ika la'akshinu le'eshet ach v'ika la'akshinu la'achot isha. So the Gemara says, well, let's now take a step back and look at the whole picture. So we have all arayot, okay? They're all in one big bubble, and the pasuk puts them together. So we can connect them all to Eshet Ach, brother's wife, and learn that there's a heter for Yibum. Or we can connect them all to Achot Isha, because we have a drasha that Achot Isha, wife's sister, that's where the drasha is, there's no Yibum. We said we learn all the other arayot that there's no Yibum from wife's sister. Well, why don't we learn that by all the other arayot there is Yibum, like Eshet Ach, like the brother's wife? Meaning, out of all the arayot, when it comes to what do we do regarding Yibum, so we have two arayot that we know what we do. One of them is Eshet Ach, brother's wife. You do Yibum. The other one is Achot Isha, wife's sister. You don't do Yibum. So all the arayot could either be learned out connected to Eshet Ach and teach me you do Yibum, or connected to Achot Isha and teach me you don't do Yibum. So that's the question. How do we know to connect to Achot Isha and teach me that there's no Yibum by Arayot? Maybe it should be connected to Eshet Ach and there is Yibum. So the Gemara gives a couple of answers. The Gemara says, so one answer the Gemara says is, I could tell you that whenever you have an option to do a hekesh to one of two cases, and one of them is going to create a leniency, one of them is going to create a stringency, it's always lechumra makshinan. When there's a hekesh, it's always coming to teach us a chumra. So over here also, if we would have connected it to Eshet Ach, we would have been matir all of these arayot to do yibum. That would have been a leniency, that a person could do yibum with his relatives, with his daughter-in-law and daughter and whatever other relatives are mentioned in the Mishnah. But now that we're connecting it to Achot Isha, it's a chumrah that we don't do yibum to these arayot. Ibaitema, or another answer, hacha trei isure, v'hacha trei isur, v'trei mitrei yalfinan, aval hacha chada isura, v'trei mechada lo yalfinan. If we were to connect it to Achot Isha, to the wife's sister, it makes more sense, because over there we're talking about a case of yibum. So she's your wife's sister and your brother's wife. Right? Two brothers marry two sisters. That's the case. So it's the wife's sister and the brother's wife. So it's two arayot. But if we connect it to Eshet Ach, that's only one erva. Now, all the other cases we're trying to learn are arayot doing yibum. So they're all two. They're all the erva plus the brother's wife. So when you have an option to connect it, you connect it to something that's more similar to it, which would be something that has two isurim. So we want to learn all the other arayot, what to do regarding yibum. We connect it to a case where there's two isurim on the woman, brother's wife plus wife's sister. We're not just going to connect it to brother's wife by itself. Rava says another answer. So this is answer number 3 as to why we need the drush of aleha. Right? First we said we need the drush of aleha specifically for a case where we would have said hoil v'ishtari, where first the guy died and she had a heter to do yibum, and then he married the sister. Then we said we have another second answer is we have this hekesh. We would have thought to make a hekesh to teach me that we learned from Eshet Ach that mutar. Rava says a different answer. So Rava says, Rava Amar erva lo tzricha kra. I don't even need the pasuk. This whole drasha is not to teach me. This is like a massive curveball in the sugya. The whole drasha that we said, aleha, we brought a whole brighter, the whole daf gimel. It's not to teach me that you don't do yibum to the actual erva herself. That I know. The aseh of yibum is not doche, a lo taseh of karet of being with an erva. So what do I need the drasha for? Right? Dein aseh doche lo taseh sheish bo karet. Aseh is not gonna override a lo taseh of karet. Ki itzterich kra. Why do I need this drasha? Lemesar tzara, to teach me that the tzara, the co-wife, is asur. Meaning, the whole drasha is not for the erva herself, it's for the co-wife of the erva.
What's a co-wife?
The guy, the brother, was married to 2 women. He was married to, one of them was an erva, and one of them was some other woman.
Can we learn that from Lisorer in the pasuk? There's an extra lashon of l'sarer.
Okay, so good. You're getting onto something that the Gemara is kind of going to ask soon. Good, very good. So he says that's what this whole drasha is for. So the Gemara says, whoa, one second. Ve'erva lo tzricha kra. You're telling me that I don't need a pasuk to teach me that there's no yibum by an erva? V'hatanya, if you look at the Braita, it said, Ein li elahi. It said, oh, okay, now I know that you're not allowed to do yibum to her, to the erva. It sounds like we're addressing not doing yibum to the erva. So the Gemara says, no, mishum tzarata. That's just a build-up to get us to the co-wife. We don't actually need a pasuk to teach me that you don't do yibum to the erva. So the Gemara says, okay, but still, v'aktani en li elahen. It says all the arayot, we learn that you can't do yibum to them. So the Gemara says, mishum tzarotehen. That's also only as a build-up to the tzarot. That's not because the actual erva herself needs a pasuk. So Tashma, Rebbe Omer, the Gemara is going to keep on asking on this shita. Tashma, Rebbe Omer, velakach ulkacha, v'yibem v'yibema. Rebbe learns from the fact that the pasuk says with a mapik hey, the pasuk says, ulkacha lo liisha v'yibema. It says he's going to take her, ulkacha, he's going to take her, v'yibema, and he's going to do yibum to her. So those are coming to exclude people. Her specifically, ulkacha, he's going to take her, this one, not someone else. V'yibema, he's going to do yibum to her, not someone else. So who is he not doing yibum to? So Rebbe learns this pasuk is le'esor tzarot v'arayot. It's coming to tell me that there's an isur of doing yibum to co-wives and arayot. So the Gemara says, okay, so you see, you're learning from a pasuk not to do yibum to an erva. Don't tell me erva doesn't need a pasuk, right? This is Rava's whole thing is predicated on the fact he's saying erva doesn't need a pasuk. Really, I know aseh of yibum is not gonna override the lo ta'aseh of karet. I don't need a special limud. What are you talking about? He's giving a special limud. He says ulkacha, you take her v'yibema. So ema, the Gemara says no. Ema le'esor tzarot shel arayot. The Gemara says no. He doesn't mean co-wives and ervas. Ervas don't need a pasuk. He means co-wives of ervas. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? V'hatrei karaig nikanasiv. He's saying two different psukim with two different limudim. So how could you tell me he means he's coming just to teach me that you can't do yibum to the tzara, to the tzarat erva, to the co-wife of the erva? He has two different psukim. Kanasiv le. So my love chad le'erva v'chad le'tzara, isn't the two psukim ulkacha v'yibema both limudim? One is for the erva and one is for the co-wife. The Gemara says lo. Idividi le'tzara. They're both for the co-wife. V'chad le'mesar tzara b'mkom mitzvah. One is to tell me that in a case of yibum, when a person is married to an erva of his brother and another woman, that the co-wife is asura to do yibum also. V'chad lemishri tzara b'shalom b'mkom mitzvah. And the other pasuk, the other word of v'yibema, the other limud, is to teach me that this isur of a co-wife of an erva is only in a situation of yibum. But if a random guy who's not a brother, some random guy is married to a person's daughter and some other woman, and he dies, that guy can marry the co-wife. There's no isur of marrying a co-wife of an erva outside of yibum. So the word v'yibema, meaning there is two limudim. One limud is ulkacha, you can only take a woman who you can take. You can't take, for yibum, you cannot take a woman who is the co-wife of an erva. And then v'yibema teaches me, and by the way, this restriction of a co-wife of an erva, it's only in a situation of yibum. But if it's not in a situation of yibum, there's no isur. So the Gemara says, then the Gemara just goes through how you learn it from these words. My ta'ama, what's the reason that it's allowed to marry a co-wife of an erva when it's not yibum? Because it says v'yibem v'yibema, you do yibum to her. Bimkom yibum hu da'asira. We learn from there that only in a scenario of yibum is it asur to be with an erva's co-wife. Da'asira tzara. Shelo bimkom yibum, but if it's not in a scenario of yibum, sharia tzara, the co-wife is muteret. Okay, Amar Rav Ashi. Says Rav Ashi, a very, very nice diuk from our Mishnah to support this. Matnitin nami deka. You can make an inference, a diuk from our Mishnah also that supports this. Dektani, 15 nashim potrot tzarotehen. What is the Mishnah trying to teach us? It says there's 15 women that are potrot tzarotehen. They are pater their co-wives. Meaning they're making it that their co-wives are pturot from Yibum. Ve'ilu pturot upotrot lo katani. It doesn't say 15 women themselves are patur from Yibum and they make their co-wives patur. It sounds like we already know that we don't need any limud or any mishnah or limud to teach me that the erva herself doesn't do Yibum. What we're learning is they make the co-wife patur, which is consistent with what Rava is saying Rava is saying over here. So Shma Mina. So you hear from this is a good diuk like Rava, that the whole Braita and the whole Limud is all just to teach me that there's no Yibum by the co-wife. Now, the Gemara asks a question, which is really Morty's question, but it asks it in a bit of a way that's difficult to understand, but we'll explain. Very simple. So the Gemara says, Maishna erva de lo tzricha kra. What's the reason? How come by an erva herself, you don't need a special pasuk to teach me that you don't do Yibum to a relative that's an erva? The whole reason is because, well, I have an aseh to do Yibum. There's an isur karet to be with this woman. So aseh does not override an isur karet. So tzara nami lo tibayikra. The tzara also should not need a special pasuk. Why? Because I don't need the word aleha. I just learned from the word litzror, like Morty said. The word litzror taught me that the co-wives are bundled together with the wives themselves, and they also have karet. So once I know they have karet, so obviously the aseh of Yibum is not going to override the karet. So mishum de'en aseh dochel lo taseh sheyesh bo karet. So I don't really need a special pasuk of the word aleha to teach me that you don't do Yibum to the co-wife of an erva. I really just need that word litzror to teach me that the co-wives have the same halacha as the erva themselves, and they're karet. Once I know they're karet, so I know, okay, you don't do Yibum. You don't do Yibum to an isur karet. So Amar le Rav Acha bar Bibi, Amar le Ravina, he said to Ravina, he says, really, really, you're right. The word aleha is not teaching me anything about the co-wife either. Ki itzrich kra lemeshre tzara shelo bimkom mitzvah. The whole reason we need the pasuk is to lemeshre, to allow the tzara when it's not a case of yibum. So again, the case where some random guy comes and marries an erva, he marries someone else's daughter or someone else's sister-in-law or something like that, and he has another wife, and then he dies. So this man is allowed to marry the tzara of his erva because it's not in a case of yibum. How do we know that? That's what we need the limud for. That's what we need the pasuk for. My ta'ama, says the Gemara. We'll read one more line. Now, my ta'ama usually means what's the reason. If you look in Rashi, that's not what it means here. Rashi says, my ta'ama klomar hechi midrasha heter mehacha. Where do we get this drasha from? Meaning we're saying there's the whole drasha of the word aleha in the Braita that we had a bunch of dafim ago on Daf Gimel Amud Bet. We said we have a drasha from the word aleha. That whole drasha is to teach me what? To teach me that there's no isur of being with a co-wife of an erva when it's not a scenario of yibum. Some random guy married your daughter and some other woman and he died, there's no isur to marry the co-wife. Now, how do we see that from the drasha? So, Amar Kra Aleha. The pasuk says the word Aleha when it's saying the isur of sister-in-law. So, Bimkom Aleha, in a case of Aleha, which is also the word used by Yibum. So, in a case of Yibum, Huda Sira, that's when this whole isur applies. Alea. Bimkom Alea Huda Asira. Shelo Bimkom Alea Sharia. But if it's not in a scenario of Yibum, then it's Mutar. So at the end of the day, right now, we're coming out with 3 answers. Our question on Daf Gimel Amud Bet was, why do I need the word aleha? We brought a drasha from the word aleha, and the brightest seemed to be telling us, we see from this word aleha that a person is not allowed to be with his wife's sister, even in a situation of yibum. The Gemara said, what are you talking about? Aseh of yibum does not override lo taseh of karet. Why would I think, why do I need this drasha? Why would I even think that you should do yibum? So today we learned 3 answers. One is, I would have thought, ho'il ve'ishtri ishtri. Since one of the isurim was removed, the isur of brother's wife was removed, so another isur doesn't block her from yibum. But that's only applicable in a case where first this lady fell to yibum, and then he married the sister and made her an erva. So in that case, we need the special drasha. That was one answer. Second answer was, I have a hekesh of all the arayot, they're connected to each other. So I might have thought that all the arayot should be learned from eshet ach, to do yibum. But we say at the end of the day, no, we learn from achor isha not to do yibum, either because whenever we make a hekesh we go to chumrah, or because other arayot are all going to have 2 isurim on them when it comes to yibum, so we learn 2 from 2. And then the last answer, Rava said that this whole braita, all this business of aleha, and it's all just to teach me that about that there's a heter of tzara shelo bimkom mitzvah, meaning I don't need to know that there's no yibum by an erva, because that's aseh is not dochel lo tasef karet. Like we went through a few dapim trying to find the makor, we didn't really come out with any clear-cut makor. So aseh is not dochel lo tasef karet. Therefore, that's obvious that we would not do yibum to the erva herself, and even the tzara. The whole pasuk is teaching me that there's a heter of marrying a tzarat erva shelo bimkom yibum, when it's not a scenario of yibum. Okay, chazakim uvruchim.